It was meant to be just another televised interview, another clash between fading tradition, and the shining confidence of the modern world. But that day, before millions watching across continents, something far older than clever rhetoric would awaken. When Marcus Veyron, the celebrated journalist known for dismantling leaders with a smile and a well-timed line, stood before Pope Leo XIV, he believed this too would be an easy conquest. He came armed with facts, rehearsed accusations, and a mind sharpened by years of televised takedowns. But what he had not prepared for, was the weight of a voice forged in suffering, a presence shaped by service, and a truth that no headline could twist. When he tried to expose the Pope's contradictions, he expected a stumble. But the reply he received left the room frozen. And across the world, millions held their breath. And what you are about to witness may change how you see power, and how you see faith. But before we dive in, comment below, where are you watching from? I want to know. If this moment stirs your heart, subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If you won't, tell us in the comments, why hold back from awakening? Pope Leo XIV was no stranger to confrontation. But unlike those who sought power, he had spent his years seeking what the world often forgot, the wounded, the unseen, the ones without a voice. Before the mitre, before the crimson robes, there was the young priest who had knelt beside lepers in the slums of Mumbai, washing their wounds with trembling hands, hands that would one day bless nations. There was the weary figure in tattered cassock, holding an orphan child beneath a makeshift tent in Brazil, while the rain beat like war drums upon canvas stretched too thin. There was the unseen man walking through bombed streets in Aleppo, his silent presence more defiant than any flag. Offering the only currency left in shattered places, human dignity. Years had carved both wisdom and sorrow into his face. And now, seated beneath the merciless glare of broadcast lights, every line, every fold of his countenance bore witness to a truth far deeper than titles or fame. This was not a pope of palaces, but a pope of scars. Across from him sat a man born of another world entirely. Marcus Veyron, sleek, eloquent, a serpent in tailored linen. A journalist whose words had brought down ministers, toppled governments, fractured movements. His charm was a mask, his questions, blades sharpened by ambition. He did not seek truth, he sought moments. Viral moments. The kind that birthed headlines, that fed the insatiable hunger of a world addicted to outrage. To him, faith was relic. Morality, an outdated script. But spectacle was currency. And today's currency was Pope Leo XIV. The setting was no cathedral. No ancient stones or vaulted ceilings to remind men of their smallness beneath heaven. Instead, a sleek, glass-walled auditorium deep within the heart of the Vatican. A space newly consecrated not by incense, but by intent, the Vatican Public Forum. A place where the sacred would meet the secular, live, before a world watching through 10,000 lenses. It was the first such dialogue in history. The first pope to sit beneath the searing eye of the modern media. Unfiltered, unguarded, unafraid. And why did it matter? Because in an age where clickbait replaced conviction, where moral clarity drowned beneath noise, this was not merely an interview. It was a test, a silent question posed to every watching soul: does truth still stand when cynicism bares its teeth? If you believe these moments should not be buried by algorithms, subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If you refuse, tell us why you fear such truth in the comments. The lights burned cold above. Cameras hummed, hungry for spectacle. The studio air hung heavy with the breathless anticipation of millions. And then, the dance began. Marcus Veyron leaned forward with the ease of a man who had done this 100 times. His smile, practiced. His tone, silk over steel. "Your Holiness," he began, voice rich with mock reverence, "in this fast-changing world, does the Church truly listen anymore? Or is it content to speak from the past, deaf to the present?" A question laced with bait. A trap disguised as dialogue. But Pope Leo did not blink. His gaze was steady, eyes deep with something older than argument, the quiet certainty of a soul anchored in greater tides. He answered with a gentle incline of his head, voice soft but resonant, "Listening is sacred," he said. "But wisdom discerns what is heard. For not all voices speak truth, and not all noise should guide the heart." A pause followed, brief, but in that breath, something shifted. Marcus' smile faltered, only for a flicker. A subtle tightening around the eyes. He pressed on, mask returning. "And yet," he continued, voice sharpening, "many say the Church's morality is outdated. Out of touch with modern values. Some would even call it oppressive. A sharper blade now, designed to draw blood before the world's gaze." But Pope Leo met the thrust not with defense, but elevation, lifting the conversation above the mire where Marcus hoped to drag it. "Morality anchored in compassion," the Pope replied calmly, "never goes out of season. The human heart still longs for truth. For love that does not change with fashion, nor crumble beneath convenience." A hush rippled through the room. Viewers leaned in. Screens flickered across continents as millions listened, drawn not to controversy, but to a rare current of stillness cutting through the noise. Marcus frowned. Subtly. A crease at the brow. This was not unfolding according to his script. His questions, honed to provoke defensiveness, instead drew forth an unshakable grace. And beneath that grace, a strength not easily rattled. For the first time in this well-rehearsed game, the hunter glimpsed the depth of the river he had waded into, and how swiftly such waters could turn. Does the world need more clever traps or deeper truths? Subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If not, comment below, what holds your heart back from listening today? But Marcus was not finished. No seasoned predator concedes the hunt so easily. Beneath the surface calm, calculation churned. His tone shifted, cooler now, his words laced with the icy veneer of journalistic objectivity. "Your Holiness," he began again, voice cutting through the quiet, "some critics say your calls for peace ignore political realities. They say in a world ruled by power and conflict, such ideals are naive." A subtle smirk ghosted his lips. This was a deeper blade, designed not to expose, but to mock. Yet Pope Leo's eyes did not narrow, nor did his brow furrow. Instead, they softened. And in that softening lay an unseen weight, a history of sorrows born in silence. His voice came low, measured, each word steeped in memory. "I have stood in bombed chapels," he said, "where stained glass lay shattered like the bones of saints. I have wept with mothers who carried the remains of their children in trembling arms. I have prayed beneath skies darkened by smoke. And still found hope beneath the ashes." He paused, not for effect, but for reverence. Then, "The truth, politics divides. The gospel unites, in ashes, and in hope." A current ran through the room. Something unseen, but deeply felt. Even the cameras, so eager for spectacle, seemed to hesitate in their mechanical gaze. Yet Marcus pressed on, urgency now replacing poise, a hunter sensing the moment slipping beyond his grasp. "And yet," he countered swiftly, voice hardening, "by preaching forgiveness, are you not excusing injustice? Are you not allowing the guilty to walk free beneath your words of mercy? It was meant to sting. To shame. To corner." But the Pope remained still, as though rooted in soil no storm could reach. His reply came slowly, each syllable deliberate, like stones laid in a foundation that would not crack. "Forgiveness," he said, "is not forgetting injustice. Nor is it surrender to the oppressor. It is the refusal to let hatred write the final chapter. It is the choice, to rebuild hearts where hatred would build walls." A hush fell, deeper than before. Not the hush of routine debate, but the kind that stirs beneath the surface of souls. A moment where even breath dares not intrude. Marcus faltered, only for a breath. But in this theater of unspoken things, a single falter spoke volumes. For he now faced not a relic of dogma, but a living testament of truth that centuries had tried, yet failed, to silence. If voices like this still inspire you, subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If you won't, write below, what fears silence your spirit from joining this search for light. But now, Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath him. The practiced poise, the controlled cadence, the audience he had so often bent to his will, none of it held sway here. And with the sheen of civility fraying, frustration began to bleed through. He leaned in, voice rising, eyes narrowing. The subtle mask of the seasoned interviewer now gave way to something rawer, sharper. "Tell me then, Your Holiness," he pressed, "are you not simply a puppet of ancient systems? Too afraid to face progress? Too bound by tradition to embrace the future the world demands?" A ripple passed through the room. The temperature seemed to drop. Even the air felt taut. Stretched thin beneath the weight of words flung like arrows. Cameras zoomed in, eager, almost predatory. They sought the flicker of doubt, the crack in the facade of the man in white. But Pope Leo XIV did not flinch. He did not shift in his seat. His hands remained folded, his gaze unwavering, not cold, not defiant, but rooted in something far older than pride. And when he spoke, his voice carried not volume, but gravity. The kind that draws the soul closer despite itself. "I have held dying children in my arms," he began, the words heavy with memory. "I have blessed mothers, who buried sons beneath broken earth." A breath, one heartbeat drawn long enough to command the room's full attention. "If that makes me a puppet," he continued softly, "then let all my strings be tied to compassion." A silence followed, vast, reverberating. Even the flickering monitors seemed to dim beneath its weight. And then, the line that would echo far beyond the walls of that studio, replayed and shared across the world, "You call it naive, to protect the innocent?" He leaned forward, not in challenge, but as one who would offer truth with open hands, whether it was received or rejected. "I call it sacred." And with those words, the very air shifted. Across the room, eyes widened, journalists, crew, onlookers, faces once primed for spectacle now caught in the quiet grip of something far deeper. Even Marcus, predator that he was, looked momentarily undone. A flicker behind the eyes. A breath caught mid-throat. The realization, conscious or not, that he now stood not across from a frail old man, but before a moral citadel unshaken by storms. For truth, once spoken with such unyielding grace, cannot be unspoken. If sacred words still move your soul, subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If not, confess below, what truth here unsettles you. By now, the energy in the room had changed. Gone was the rhythm of debate. The easy volley of question and response had been broken, shattered beneath the weight of a truth spoken without apology. Yet Marcus Veyron, driven by a force greater than pride, gathered himself once more. His breath steadied. His shoulders lifted with a final, visible resolve. One more attempt. One more strike to reclaim the ground beneath him. But surely, he ventured, voice striving for composure, surely engagement with such systems, with such outdated beliefs, risks lending them your endorsement. Your moral authority gives weight to those who use it for their own ends. It was clever, a blade honed on both edges, meant to imply complicity where none existed. But Pope Leo leaned forward, slow, deliberate. His movement alone carried the gravity of one who answered not to thrones nor cameras, but to a higher throne unseen by mortal eyes. When he spoke, the words were calm, yet unshakable, as if chiseled from the very bedrock of conscience. "You confuse engagement," he said softly, with endorsement. "To listen, is not to surrender conviction. To speak into darkness, is not to become its echo. We serve not an agenda," the Pope continued, voice deepening, each word landing with quiet force, "but a calling. A calling, to defend the unseen. To uplift the broken. To stand where others would flee, and to speak when silence would cost souls their dignity. A pause, profound, sacred. The kind of pause that reverberates louder than sound. Then, a shift. The Pope's gaze, steady, unwavering, fixed fully upon Marcus. No malice. No triumph. Only a question, ancient as conscience itself. His voice dropped, barely more than a whisper, yet heard by every soul present. Tell me. Why does defending children make you uncomfortable? The question hung in the air, a mirror turned not just toward Marcus, but toward all who watched, and all who would watch in the days to come. Marcus froze. For a single, infinite heartbeat, no reply came. Not the clever retort rehearsed in the mind of a seasoned journalist. Not the reflexive denial bred by habit. Only the stark reflection of a question that pierced beneath veneer and intellect, down to the marrow of the soul. And in that moment, the confrontation ceased to be a contest of minds. It became a reckoning. For what began as an attempt to corner a pope, had become a mirror held to the world itself. And sometimes, mirrors show what words cannot undo. Do not let silence win over wisdom. Subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If you resist, comment, what keeps you from walking this path of awakening? And then, when the silence had stretched beyond the reach of rhetoric, when no further challenge rose from across the table, Pope Leo did something unexpected. He turned his gaze away from Marcus. Not in dismissal, but in gentle release, and lifted his eyes toward the watching millions. His voice, when it came, was no longer that of a man answering a single journalist. It was the voice of a shepherd speaking to a weary flock scattered across a fractured world. My friends, he began, a gentle smile folding the corners of eyes shaped by both grief and grace, this moment is not about one question, nor one interview. It is about the world we are shaping for those who come after us. A pause, deliberate, not for effect, but to allow the weight of those words to settle upon every listening heart. We must choose, he continued softly, whether to build upon division, or upon compassion. We must decide whether the voices we elevate will fuel the fires of suspicion, or light the lamps of understanding. And we must remember, now more than ever, that the world does not hunger for more voices shouting. It hungers for more hearts listening. He allowed the silence that followed to breathe, for it was not an absence of sound, but the presence of something deeper, a call stirring beneath the noise of modern life. In the control room, technicians sat motionless. Behind cameras, veteran crew members blinked against an unfamiliar ache rising unbidden in their chests. And beyond the walls of that studio, across continents and screens, countless unseen souls felt something they had not expected in this hour of spectacle, conviction. And hope. The cameras, sensing the moment's close, began to fade, but they could not dim the echoes of what had been spoken. For such words do not reside in pixels or in sound waves. They root themselves in the soil of the human heart, where they wait, and grow. If your heart still hears the echo of such truth, subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories. If you resist, tell us below, what stirs within you, yet keeps you from answering this call. And now, as the lights dim, and the final echoes of that dialogue fade into stillness, I ask you, not as a voice of judgment, but as a fellow traveler beneath the same uncertain sky, what would you have said if you were in that room? Would you have reached for the comfort of well-worn arguments? Would you have clung to the safety of silence, or the applause of those who prize noise over truth? Or would you have stood, trembling perhaps, but firm, with truth? For truth does not demand perfection. Only the courage to answer its call. A pause, the kind that feels like a hand resting gently upon the heart. May we all seek truth with humble hearts, and never mistake applause for anointing. A breath, drawn not from the lungs, but from the soul itself. Subscribe to Faith Hidden Stories, not for stories, but for awakenings. And if you still won't, Enter the comments below, and tell us, what truth here made you uncomfortable today?